Welcome to the next edition of Expert Showcase. Today we have our special guest, Thais Guimaraes, and she's going to be talking to you and telling you how to totally say yes to your life. Hey there, Thais. How you doing today?
I'm doing so good, Chris. How are you?
Good, Thais. And I was going to, whenever I have a difficult name to pronounce, I always kind of say an over-under. We had Horace Reese. I almost mispronounced his name again. I was going to set it at 1, but since I've already mispronounced your name going into this, it'll now be set at 2. So for those of you betting and following along at home, the over-under for me mispronouncing the lovely Thais' name today is 2, and the count is already at 1. So... so given all of that, Thais, what we're going to do here in the first part of the segment is jump into your hero's journey. So why don't you give us a 30 to 60 seconds, just a real quick summary of your journey, where you started, your turning point, and kind of where you are now.
Sure. So 60 seconds, that's kind of hard. It all started for me in college. I went to school at Boston University. It was a pretty high caliber school, and I really wanted to make something for myself, and I wanted to get away from my small town in Maryland and make a name, do big things. And when I moved to Boston, I started falling under a crowd of people who had body insecurities and body issues. And so I was in a vulnerable place. Being in a new school, I started to get their body insecurities onto myself, and started going into the cycle of doing binging, anorexic, exercising, conundrum situation. And it led into pretty serious binge eating issues. And I didn't understand what binge eating was. I am a type A, intelligent, academic sort of woman, and very well in control of my mind and body, or so I thought. And so I couldn't understand why I was suddenly devouring pizza pies all by myself. And I would go into the cafeteria and grab a handful of cookies and stuff them into my pocket and walk to class eating the cookies, because I didn't want people to see that I was eating so many cookies. And I obviously gained weight, but more than that, I was very psychologically in a very low place, and I just did not understand what was going on. And it culminated into what I call a dark night of the soul, my last year in college, where I just didn't know what else to do. I was a very proud atheist at the time. Thank you very much. And I can't keep saying it enough and enough that I just did not know what was going on. And in this dark night of the soul, in this very dark, very hot night in Boston, I remember crying because I could only think about this block of cheese that was in the fridge that I really, really wanted to eat, and yet I didn't want to fucking eat a block of cheese. So I was crying. I was very low. I was very scared. I was very, very alone. And I decided to just put my hands together, and I looked up and I said, God, I don't know what you are, but I need help. I don't know what to do. And I got a response back, and the response was, Thais, you're going to be okay. Believe it or not, you're going to be okay. And in that moment, I knew I had to try something new. And so that's what led me into trying yoga, and that's what helped me connect with my body. And at that point, I knew that there was something here that I needed to support other women who were going through their own journey. And so I went into health coaching school to become a health coach. And that kind of turned after a while, a couple revolutions, where I realized that binge eating is just a symptom to a larger cause. And I wanted to deal with the cause. I wanted to deal with the root of any anxiety, whether it's binge eating or any sort of addiction or just numbness and not feeling alive in our lives. So my business has been now to, I think, 3 evolutions, where now I consider myself a leadership coach, empowering women to really say yes to their life.
Excellent. So to kind of summarize that, you started off, you were a very intelligent person, and you got to a very dark place through whether it would be food addiction or some traumatic experiences. And what you found through there was you found God, and you found a way out, and now you're helping others find that same way out and lead themselves. Does that sound?
Yes, exactly.
See, you can do it in 30 to 60 seconds. Well, the interesting thing is that, take a quick digression. The interesting thing is it's typical. I do it as well. I mean, people tell me to ask me to summarize. When we were prepping, you heard my history summarized in 30 to 60 seconds. Now, for those people who know me, they're going, no, there's no way Chris says anything in 30 to 60 seconds. He likes to tell you a story, and that's great. One of the things that does become kind of interesting as we take this major digression is, when you're telling a story, and for those of you watching, when you tell your own hero's journey, it's going to resonate a lot better with people if you can summarize it real quick and then let people ask questions. It really starts to get people involved. So let's dig down, and I'm going to ask you some questions because I really want to hear, more about it. I went through people who have watched this show and watched other shows I've done and watched some of my talks I've known. I went through, I'll say, a similar dark time, and I even kind of looked up once and I said, I asked for a story, but this is kind of enough is enough here. Can you please show me and turn the page? So I can definitely resonate with having that dark time, and I think a lot of our viewers can as well. The interesting thing, though, is a lot of people like yourself who go through that dark time are very intelligent. It's like they start off and they're in a position, and then they just have these challenges. So do you remember what you were feeling or what you were going through, kind of like in that bridge period where you were intelligent and you thought, you were intelligent and you had it all together. You were going to a great university and you started to go down. Do you remember what you were feeling, what you were thinking, what you were going through at that point?
Yeah, well, it's kind of like, I know this is going to be a silly comparison, but I immediately thought of a Jack Russell Terrier, and how when I was debating what type of dog to get a long time ago, I learned that Jack Russell Terriers are a menace if you don't give them work to do. If you don't give them something to do, they will find their own work. And I think for intelligent people, where we very much are very focused on the mind, if we don't give ourselves something to do or a way of thinking that is structured around empowering us, if we don't have the right support system and the right structures in place, the mind is going to create its own havoc. It is so wired to do so. And so during that time in my life, I was really very angry. I play victim. It's very easy for us to play victim. I think that it's a universal thing that when something hard happens, it's like, why me? So there was definitely a lot of victim, but honestly, it was a lot of denial. It was a lot of, oh, I don't have a binge eating problem. I just eat emotionally once or twice, but it's going to go away. It's going to go away. It's just going to go away without me even having to do anything. Without me having to change anything, it's just going to go away. And that's the beautiful thing about the mind, is that it will rationalize the crap out of anything if we don't have the right systems and structures in place. And now I tell my clients, we either lean on fear or we lean on love. It's really quite that simple. We are either leaning, because we have to lean on something. We have to find something to support us. And if we don't have the right things in place, we're going to lean on fear, on the I'm not good enough, and that the world sucks, and why me? And if we lean on fear, it perpetuates the anxiety. And that's what I was going through. So even though I was in denial that it wasn't happening, I was continuing binging a lot. Also being a really crappy friend and really crappy individual, thinking that it was just suddenly going to fix itself and go away.
Yeah, and it's amazing. You pack so much information into what you just said, and I want to reach out to our viewers right now and say, do you resonate with what Thais is saying? Are you intellectual and maybe going through some stuff and almost like being a John Nash, so to speak. It's everybody who's watched A Beautiful Mind knows the story of John Nash and the fact that he came up with, I think it was game. I'm going to call it game theory. I don't think that was the real name. I don't remember. This is where sometimes information just gets kind of spun around up there. I'll remember it eventually, but the short version is that game theory. That's what it was, I think. But anyway, the short version is he was a very smart mathematician and ended up having a mental disorder, and he kept trying to figure out how to fix it with his mind because he thought he should be able to fix it. And I think, Thais, it's interesting. You were, it sounds like you were going through something similar where, like, I'm intelligent. I should be able to, fix it and realize it. And then it just got to a place where it finally said, hey, I can't anymore. The other thing I want to invite our viewers to really hone in on is the leaning on things. And Thais, I'd like to add a third thing to your lean on. You can lean on fear, or you can, you made a comment about leaning on fear. And what was the other thing you said?
Love.
Love. Or you can lean on a coach. And I say that because, let's face it, we all need another human being at points to lean on, and that's why what Thais is doing is so great, to take the stuff that she's gone through in her hero's journey and turn it into helping other people. So that night, whether people watching this are atheists or faith-based people, like myself, we all get to those dark times. But that night when you were there and you kind of realized that things had to change. Can you take us through that at all, and kind of,
Sure.
where you were at right before, and kind of, how you went through that?
Yeah, I can tell you because I remember so vividly. I mean, just to give you a little background, my dad is a very intelligent nuclear physicist at the University of São Paulo in Brazil, and he's also very proud of being an atheist. And I say an angry atheist, not because every atheist has to be angry, but just because he was an angry atheist, where he just. And it got instilled onto me this sense of, if there was a God, why is there so much crap happening in the world? Like, clearly there is no God. We just have to rely on ourselves, and all this stuff about religion being bad. And so that was the place that I was coming from, where I had to rely on myself because I couldn't rely on anybody else to help me. And in that moment, I was in my best friend's apartment. She didn't have air conditioning, and it was in Boston in the middle of August, so you can imagine it was extremely hot. And I was just lying there in bed, in this uncomfortable bed, because it wasn't my own. And I was actually going through some serious physical illness. And so I wasn't very strong physically as either. And I was just lying there thinking, oh my gosh, all I want is that block of cheese. And there's something wrong with me. There's something wrong with me for wanting that. And that's where I think a lot of people have the breakdown, where they realize that there's something wrong with them. There's nothing wrong with us. It's just that we have such a strong structure of what we think our lives need to be like, that when we actually look at what our lives are, we think that that discrepancy means that there's something wrong with us. So that's where I was. And I just didn't know what to do, Chris, because I realized I couldn't do it alone. At that moment, I just realized that I could not, there's no way that I can get out of this anymore through my own means. What I was doing up to that point, 3 years up to that point, hadn't been helping me. In fact, I was only getting worse. So something had to change. Something had to change. And so when I prayed, when I put my hands together and I said, I need help, and I got that answer, it wasn't like I was suddenly like, oh, all God, and completely changed into this like person. No, it just meant that I was willing at that moment to accept that there must be a different way, and that I didn't know that way, but I was willing to learn that way. And just recently, I was going through my journal entries of that time to see what that experience was like in that moment. And the only thing that I wrote about it is that the next day I decided it was time to try self-love. And that's how God entered my life in that moment. Was not by now going to church. It wasn't by now trying to, find out all these dogmatic doctrines, but really to just dive into what does self-love look like. And then that took me onto the path that just completely changed everything for me.
Yeah, that's amazing, and it's really amazing to hear you tell that. And I love that seminal moment that you came to when you realized that you couldn't do it by yourself, but you went on to realize you could get you could have some answers within yourself, and you could go find the answers, but at that point you weren't equipped to do it by yourself. I think is maybe a good way to put it, right?
Yeah, well, it's just, it's kind of like, this is a great example. It's like a computer. I can do basic functions on the computer, but I don't know anything about programming or anything like that. So there comes a point where if my computer is broken and I keep trying to fix it, it's not going to work. But when I say, I don't know how to fix it, Just by saying that, you are opening the door for another possibility. That possibility could be another idea, another, oh, I hadn't tried this new thing, and that's the thing that works. Or the new possibility is, oh, I need to hire somebody. I need to pay someone to do this, right? Or it just means that you're just open now to not only relying on what you've been doing, to entertain new ideas, a new way of being that is completely radically different than anything you've ever done before.
Yeah, and that's a great way to put it. And that's, it's always a shame when we have to get to that really low point to try something radical. Problem is, it's biology, and it's a lot of biology and chemistry. And the reason I bring that up here is there's a lot of people, especially in our industry, who just tell you to go do something, like tell you to jump off and build your wings on the way down, tell you how to say yes, and tell you how to do, or not tell you how, but tell you to. And they say, just do it. And yeah, there's a point where you can say just do it is okay, but fact of the matter is that you sometimes have to get over that emotion, and things have to get really bad because your brain is locking you up, your brain's trying to protect you, and it's a shame things had to get as bad for you as they did to kind of open up and say, it wasn't, things weren't going to change. The thing I find interesting is that I think you logically realize, it sounds like you logically along the point realized, hey, there's something not right here, but it wasn't a strong enough impetus to change. The why wasn't, the why wasn't big enough until you finally hit that rock, that really dead rock bottom. Is that a fair thing to say?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I would love to add something, and it's a really
Sure.
radical concept, but I find it to be so true in my life and in the lives of others, is that suffering is actually a really amazing thing. And I would never have gone back and changed that experience or changed my whole story or any of it, because it led me to where I am. But even beyond that, suffering is necessary. It is so necessary, and it's because that's it's the only way that we can break the ego. We have to go through such a low point that the ego is no longer going to be our leaning device. It is no longer helpful. And that's when we decide to do something different. And that's beyond ego. And Eckhart Tolle really writes this beautifully in his book, New Earth, and I recommend it to anyone who's in that point in their lives where they are seeking to understand their suffering. But it's just, it really resonates with me how when people suffer, I just send them compassion and love, because they have to go through it. We have to suffer. And that's why I truly believe, like, even on a global scale, I'm a huge environmental activist, and I get very passionate about the environment, and how dare us be treating our planet in such a bad way. And I have to realize that, one, there's a divine plan for everything, even if we can't understand it. And two, we have to suffer. Unfortunately, we have to keep ruining the planet, and it breaks my heart to say it, but it reaches a climax. It always does. And then that's when we realize, like a consciousness, not just on the mind, but on a consciousness level, that what we're doing isn't working anymore. And that's when everything is going to shift. So even though we can't understand it, and I don't want to, I'm not saying like, yay, suffering, but it is this thing where we can't ask people not to go through it. It is something that we all have to go through, because it's the only way that we really understand who we truly are.
Yeah, and the interesting part, it's almost like back to the old saying of it ain't broke, don't fix it. And the reason I say that is because that's the way a lot of people think, but then, without, so in other words, like you were talking about the environment, we think everything is going okay by everything we're doing, whether it's plastic or everything else. So we don't turn this into a green show. We could probably do a whole nother show on being green and, recycling and how bad plastic is and all, all that other stuff. But it, really gets to the point where, and I think, how can I put this? I think the old saying of it, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, really applies to your journey as well, and applies to a lot of people's journey, where even though at some levels intellectually you knew things were going downhill, it still didn't seem broken. It's still, I'm going to guess you still had friends. I'm going to guess you still had, people. I'm going to guess that, it's kind of, you might have had physical ailments, but it wasn't like you were in a wheelchair. It's kind of like, it's really similar to on TLC. They've got this My 600-Pound Life show, which, I was formerly aware I was formerly 300 pounds, and I went through my own weight journey. So I'm very interested in watching this show to watch what people go through on it. And it's like the only way you get that big And the only way you get to that major of a point is because you're just, it's like it's not completely broke. It's like, you know, we're still duct taping things together and moving forward. So back to the most important thing, which is you. What I want to do is kind of ramp up a little bit. I know we're going to talk more about it in part 2 with Experts Focus. So I just want to kind of ramp up and take us through the time. We're going to do this kind of, I'll say we'll do this kind of quick. Take us through the time after you said, hey, I've got to change, and take us through a little bit of that journey. And then I'm sure we're going to talk a little more about it in segment 2, and I'm sure people can find out more about you by going to your website, which we'll give them later on, and the special offer, which we're going to give them later on. They have to stick around to see. So just start taking us through a little bit of the journey after, you know, you had that dark time and after you said, I've got to change, something's got to change. You know, take us through a little bit of that.
Yeah, so I had one more year of school to go, and you know, it was gradual. It wasn't some mega big change like suddenly I'm enlightened. Unfortunately, wouldn't that have been awesome?
No burning bush, no burning bush, no golden tablets from the, nothing like that.
I mean, definitely what happened was I started to read books. I started to ask questions. My mother is a spiritual teacher, and she has just been an incredible support system for me throughout my life. But at that point in my life, I didn't know how to connect with her in that way because I didn't believe in anything she said in terms of that. But after that moment, I started really leaning on her and asking her and reading books. And it took some time, but that's when I started trying yoga. And when I started going to my yoga mat, and I noted the first yoga class that I went to was a vinyasa class. And for maybe, I would say, a split second, I mean, it wasn't more than that, but for a split second, my mind quieted enough that I realized that there's a thing underneath my chin, you know, that there's this thing down here that actually has an incredible intelligence. And it was only a split second, but I was addicted to yoga at that moment. So I started going to yoga class and trying to understand, okay, well, my mind hasn't been, supporting me. How about my body? What can I do to connect with my body? And, Chris, binge eating and any sort of anxiety, really, it doesn't just disappear. It took me an additional 4 years for me to get to a point where I now have a relationship with food, where I can notice if I am going to go into that binge cycle, and then I can stop myself and reassess. But the instinct is still there because it's very primal now. It's the way that the brain, for me, has helped me overcome fears and all that good stuff. So it's not about fixing, and that's why I really hate the word self-help or self-development, because I don't really know if that's true. I don't know if it's so much about fixing a broken self, but rather going in and delayering, taking away all of the fears, the negativities, and the stories, and the fears, and the beliefs that we've cultivated about ourselves, to allow the inner perfection, the inner part within us that is completely 100% connected and whole and there, and allow that to come through. So that has been my journey. And once I started going into yoga and going into the holistic road, I did my teacher certification, started teaching the health coach, shifted my business a million times to what it is now. But it has truly become for me a calling, that if I have found such incredible tools and healing mediums and belief systems that have transformed me 100%. I mean, I don't have any friends from that point in time because they don't understand, they don't resonate in the same level. So if there's so much in me, I am doing a disservice to the world if I am not putting it out there. And so that's where I am today, and it's been such an incredible journey.
And I think that is a great place to wrap up segment 1. So today we're talking with Thais Guimaraes, and so the over-under is still at 1. For those of you who don't understand that joke, you got to watch the beginning, and I'm quite sure I'll reference it a few more times. We're going to take a very quick break right now. So grab yourself a cup of water, do something, but it's only going to be a quick break. And when we come back from the break, we're going to talk to and get deeper into how to totally say yes to your life. And Thais, we're going to give people, guys got to come back to see it. I was going to go in, but no, we got to take a break. I'm quite sure everybody got to take a break. Oh, the producer telling me to take a break. Okay, got to listen to the producer. As I roll my eyes, people will get that joke. But anyway, we're going to take a real quick break, and we'll be right back. And welcome back. We're back here with Thais Guimaraes. The over/under still at 1. Thais, I'm getting a little more used to saying. I'm getting a little more used to saying the
You're
name.
doing great.
So. And for those of you who have no clue what I'm talking about, you're going to have to watch segment 1, the hero's journey piece of this. So Thais, your topic today is how to totally say yes to your life. Why don't you give us a quick overview of what we're going to be talking about today, and then I'll give the folks the 3 bullet points, and then we'll get rock and rolling.
Sure. So saying yes to your life means, for me, how do we get out of our comfort zone, get out of what we are used to, and we start going into a hero's journey where we actually up-level our lives so that we can get what we want and move up in a really quantum leap sort of way. And it really encompasses 3 main steps, I would say, which is understanding your desires and your relationship with desires, which is, oh my gosh, like a whole freaking thing on its own. And then looking at fears, because obviously if we didn't have fears, we would have what we want and we would be effortlessly going after it. And then taking the bold, massive actions and taking the steps there so that we can find and see a big shift in our lives. So those are the 3 overarching bullets underneath this say yes transition conversation.
Awesome. Well, I'm all about up-leveling my life. That's an epic thing to do. I haven't said the word epic in a while. How to use it. But anyway, so today we're gonna focus on 3 main points. On first of all, getting clear on what you want. Second, addressing the fear, and third, taking empowered action. So, Thais, let's dive right into it. When you say get clear on what you want, what do you really mean by that?
Sure. So I used to, when I was leading some workshops, and I asked the women in the workshops to write down what they want, and they would tell me, and it was so basic. It was just such these little tiny steps forward, like, oh, I just want a tiny little raise and then I'll be happy, or I just want this tiny little thing. And I realized that we have a really convoluted relationship with desires, where I think a lot of us have been taught that we can't have what we want. At least certainly I was. I grew up in I grew up in Brazil, and my mom didn't have a lot of money, and so as a kid you want a lot of things. We want a lot of things as a kid. I think every kid, I mean, you see it at the grocery store, they freaking want everything. And so the parent, in their very trying to be wise self, says you can't always have what you want. And that is a belief that has been sucked into my mind, and then I took it out into every aspect of my life, that I couldn't have what I want, that what I wanted was unrealistic. And I found that in my workshops and working with these women, that it's true for them too. That we have this really convoluted relationship with desires, where we see these self-help conversations that say go after what you want, and yet we have this really old archaic belief that we can't have what we want. So what do? We create very tiny little desires. I just want this little thing, hoping that somehow by taking this tiny little action, or not even taking action at all, the thing that we magically want is going to come into our lives. So it's important, as a very first step, to notice what beliefs you have around desires. A lot of religious conversations say that wanting and desires are bad, it's sinful, it's wrong to want. And it's understandably so, because on the flip side of the conversation, if we want too badly, we become miserable. If all of our days are spent in wanting something in the future, we're miserable in the present, and it becomes a battle in our minds, and we become miserable and we suffer. And so the religious conversation has said, well, then since that's the case, well, just don't want at all. But we have a natural propensity to want. And in fact, just as the universe is forever expanding, so is our desire to grow and for us to expand. Us expanding is natural. It's now just coming with a really powerful magnetic relationship with desires that enable you to be empowered to have desires, but then not so tied up and so caught in them that it makes you unhappy when you don't have it, or when things go a different way. Or even
to take it take it one step further, that if you have, wanting and having desires is great, and how can I put this? When you don't get it, like you had said, if you take it so far that when you don't get it, you're upset, that's a bad thing. It's also if you take it so far that if you do anything you can to get it, you could put yourself in an even worse, an even worse situation. It's kind of like if you only have, like, say you only have $1,000 in the bank, and you or say you have $1,000 in the bank and you want the latest iPad that comes out. Well, if you only have $1,000 and you have no job and you go out and get the iPad, you got what you wanted, which is great. But, can you pay your rent? Can you put food on your table and everything else? So I think it ends up becoming, or I should say, would you agree it ends up becoming a balancing act? We're understanding that wanting something is good, but not taking it too far to either destroy your life by getting it or destroy your life by wanting it so bad and not having it, right?
I completely agree. And I call that a compulsion. A compulsion is when you want something so bad that you risk everything in a very negative way. Like you hurt people and you spend beyond your means that really negatively will impact your life for something that's not going to bring much value into your life. And there's a difference between that and taking a risk, let's say, to hire a coach that you can't afford because you trust that by working with her, the money will flow in or whatever, right? So there's a difference there. And a lot of times when we talk about want, we do think material things. We think, well, I want a big car and I want a big house and all that great stuff. But what we're really wanting in that moment is security, right? What we're really wanting is freedom. So we have to really look at what's underneath that physical desire. If we really want an iPad, why is that? Do you want an iPad really bad because it's going to elevate your business or because you want to show off to your friends? And so what's interesting, Chris, is that I can talk, like I said, I can talk forever about this, but when we want something, there is almost always a good reason and then a not so great reason. And we can't reject the want just because we have a not so great reason for wanting it. If I want a multi-million-dollar business, sure, 99% of me could be because I want to make a big change. But if there is that 1% part of me that's like, well, but I also want it because I want to prove to all those people that didn't believe in me, or, whatever the negative desire, it doesn't mean that the whole desire is wrong. And we just have to know that that's going to happen. It's the psychology of the mind is fascinating, and we can't just put it in black and white. But what I'm getting back to is the compulsion. We do want to make sure that when we are wanting things, if it's gotten to the point where it's become a toxic want, that's a compulsion. And that means it's an opportunity for you to really go inside and ask yourself, what are you running away from that is more easy for your mind to cling on to that want than to do the internal work to clear up whatever it is that you are attaching to that physical thing.
Well, and even to flip your example around, you could have a desire to have a multi-billion-dollar business that has, or at least in my opinion, has that 99.9% of that reason is very negative because you just want to, because you just want to be, because you want to be king of the mountain, because you just want to show everybody that you made it, that you're here, and all the other stuff. And there could be the 1/10% that you really want to make a difference in the world by leaving a legacy and by creating a strong company. And if you can find that and then work with a coach to turn that into the 99.9% and allow maybe that negative thing to stick around, I don't think that's so bad. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I immediately thought, well, karma, it's going to get back to you. It's like there's things that are just going to level itself out. And we really have to take responsibility for what we put out there. If you are 100% aware that you are very selfish in your motives, then that awareness alone is going to shift some of that. And by bringing in a coach, for certainly you can, if you have a desire to shift it, that alone is going to change things. It's really the question of intention more than anything else. If you have a positive intention and you accidentally hit someone's car, is that bad karma? No. Let's say positive intention, i.e. you had no desire of hitting somebody whatsoever and your brake released, your brake stopped working and you hit somebody. So you didn't have an intention to hit that person, therefore you're not going to have this bad karma, right? Well, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, and it also explains why for some sports athletes. I mean, you can look at some athletes out there who are, or even some people in our industry, personal growth, who are the most arrogant people in the world. If you split everything aside and took them and took what they were saying, and even their tone and everything, took it out of their body, put it on something else, different face, different voice, you didn't know who it was, you would say they are the most arrogant people in the world, but everybody loves them. And it's kind of like, okay, you're not trying to be arrogant. You're not trying to, your heart isn't nasty. It's just what we have as a society defined as arrogant or selfishness is what's coming out in your words and your tone, but your heart is something, is something different. We have a
Oh,
very interesting thing going on in this area right now. I'm outside Philadelphia, and we just drafted, at the time of this recording, we had just drafted this new guy for the Philadelphia 76ers named Jahlil Okafor. And the bizarre thing is, you're listening to his interviews going, they're asking him questions, and he's only 19, so you have to cut him some slack. But if you hear what he's saying, he's very, very arrogant about what he's saying, but everybody's giving him a free pass. And I think it's because A, he's 19, and B, you listen to him and you hear him be arrogant and selfish, but it's not that he's trying to be. He's just being honest, and it's kind of like he's got, I know it's kind of a weird, it's just a quick digression, but I think that's part of what you're saying, though, when you say intentions, like what's your heart say, forget about the words and the tone, what's your heart really saying, right?
and I would say, Chris, I would ask you, if you're reflecting on him, some part of you that may be in some way looking at his confidence as a not so great thing, because there may be a part of you that wants that. I mean, who knows, right? I could be listening to him and say, oh, he's not arrogant at all. He's just a very confident young man. And you may think that he's arrogant. And the next person may think that he's not, that he's pompous. And the next person may think that he's not. And it's just really fascinating how we all have this different perspective on the same thing. And it could be something within us and nothing to do with that individual.
Yeah, it could be. But when the kid comes out and says, "Yeah, I'm great, and I expect to be this," like I said. The interesting part, though, is that you're right. You could be, people could be reflecting. I could be reflecting. That's always, it's always a possibility. I guess what I'm getting to was two things. One, if you look at the words, the tone, and everything, what he's saying is really is very selfish and arrogant. But everybody's giving him a break, and I believe it's because they're seeing his heart. That was really the point I'm trying to get to. There's somebody else in our industry who's a huge name that I've been with many times, I've seen on stage many times, and if you take words and everything, very, very arrogant. I mean, it's kind of weird watching everybody love the guy, but you realize that they're seeing his heart. And that's really what I was trying to get to in the whole thing, is the fact of, even if you're selfish, the people who are selfish and don't get recognized as being selfish are the people that people are seeing their heart, not, they're kind of ignoring the words, and they're realizing it's not. It's kind of like the old days. You used to say, oh, it's just so-and-so. Everybody has somebody in their family that is, stupid or that does something, and they say, oh, don't worry about him, it's just so-and-so. And that's kind of what I was getting to. So let's get back to the main point here, because what it sounds to me, before we get into point number 2, what it sounds to me, I'm getting clearer on what you want. It sounds like you ask people why they want what they say they want to help them get down to that true want, to the root cause, right?
Yes, certainly. There's a whole process that goes into really understanding our desires and having a really amazing relationship with it. And it starts with asking, well, why is it that I want this? But it also asks, what will come from it if I have this? By doing this, what am I hoping will come out of it? And looking at that outcome, because that's going to determine, too, if we want something, that we can actually have right now, and we're really just pushing it off in the future because we think it's not available to us right now, or if it's something that we really want. So let's make this more tangible. So for example, I just moved to LA. I moved to LA about 2.5 weeks ago. And back in November, when I was discussing with my boyfriend whether or not I wanted to move here, I asked myself, well, do I really want to move to California? Or am I saying I want to move to California because I want to be with my boyfriend because he was living here at the time? Or am I moving to California because I think that something will come out of me moving to California? Or is there just a desire for me to move out there because I genuinely love the city? And if, God forbid, anything were to happen to me and my man, that's something that, I would be able to be happy here. And I really had to ask myself and get very clear on that. And part of my brain was saying, well, you're crazy for wanting to move to LA. You've never wanted to move to California. Why do you, how dare you think that you want this? And how dare you think that you're going to be successful there? And all this stuff. And this is when really it's amazing to work with a coach, because you can actually have a mirror, someone show you all these thoughts that are going on for you. But at the end of the day, I've come to understand that I wanted to move to LA because I felt a calling to move here. And that if, you know, Mark and I broke up, if I didn't make any friends, whatever, if I never found success here, I still would have wanted to make this adventure happen. And so I committed, and I said that I wanted this. And then I took the next steps that we're going to start talking about. But it's so crucial for us to get really clear on desires and on our compulsions and on our selfish things, and make sure that we're clearing the slate, because that's the foundation. And I truly believe that by wanting things, and if we can get into a really good relationship with it, it is the only way that we can up level, that we can, you know, make the financial amount that we want, that we can have the relationship that really honors us, and that we can have the house that we enjoying the journey and being really happy no matter what happens.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's a great point to go into your second point, which is addressing the fear, because it sounds like, you know, when you were trying to make your decision to move out to California, you had to address some fears and try to figure out why. Is that a fair thing to say?
Very fair.
So when you work with people on addressing the fear, how do you help them address their fear?
Well, first, just by having a conversation about what you want, all the fears come out. But really, fears are just belief systems. So, you know, we have pretty much the same thoughts every day. It's something ridiculous, like 80% of the thoughts we have today, we had yesterday, we had the day before. And so the majority of the thoughts that we still carry on today, we developed around the age of 5. Which means that we are living in the same belief system and the same mentality and the same ideas about life that we cultivated and created in childhood. So that's mind-boggling. Example is you can't have what you want, or life, money doesn't grow on trees, or all these beliefs that we established when we were little are still exactly what we carry today. And if we don't address those things, which will come up as we get clear on our wants, we're going to stay stuck.
Yeah, and as one of my mentors says, stuck stinks, right?
Exactly. And fear is just such a tricky little bugger because it comes in so many different ways. It doesn't come sometimes as, I'm afraid of spiders. It can come as, who are you? Who are you to do this? It can come in, well, that can never happen to me. It can come with, well, I just need more training. If I just had one more training, or I just need a little bit more money. All these rationalizations are ultimately fears. And so my work with my clients is to have the conversation of, okay, so, you know, if you wanted something and you don't have it, it means that there's a block within you and outside of you that is not, has blocked you from getting what you want. So what do you think that block could be? And it's a delayering process. It takes time, it takes trust, but ultimately we can do it ourselves by just asking ourselves, why haven't I gone after this? Why don't I believe I can have this? Why do I believe that I need to stay in this position? You know, well, it's because I believe that, you know, what if nothing better comes out of it? Or what if I fail? Or what if, okay, those are the fears. And then the big work, Chris, the big frickin' work is how can we not listen to the fear? And that's where I get a lot of questions from my gals, my women, is, well, how do I know if it's fear or intuition? Because in the spiritual world, we want to be very connected to our intuition. How do we know the difference between fear and intuition? And that's the big conversation to be had. And how do we not listen to the fear when it's so loud or sounds so powerful or seems so rationally logical? And that's where the work begins.
Yeah, and you know, you're so right as far as the separating fear from intuition. It's funny, I was watching on ESPN, they had this series called 30 for 30, and they were talking about an old NFL running back, Marcus Dupree. And the kid was short version is he was supposed to be the best running back. He was the best running back in the country. Ended up coming out of college early at a time nobody did that. Ended up going to play in the USFL when it was still around. And one morning before a game, he was talking to his friend. And he said, I don't feel right. I just don't I just don't feel like I should play today. And because he had quit college, because he had quit 2 colleges, because he had quit in a lot of things in his life, his friend looked at him and said, "You can't just not play whenever you want." Well, unfortunately, that day he went out, got hit in the knee, and ended his career. And it was a bizarre thing where it was, it looked to the outside world, and because he had gotten so caught up in always quitting and always, he's not a quitter now, but at that point when he was 19 and he was, if he didn't like something, he just didn't do it. And he moved on, and so it was very interesting to watch where he actually had intuition that something bad was going to happen, and he didn't listen to it because he had been clouded because all the other times he had begged out and done something different. So the reason I bring all that up is, do you find that in your work with your women to figure out whether it's intuition or fear, do you find that as a big kind of, I'll say, stumbling block almost, where it's kind of like somebody looks like they have a certain personality, so you kind of got to get them over it, but then there are some times where the intuition is 100% right, that that they should have not done something. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yes, it makes total sense. Well, the first work that we have to do is really get clear on what intuition feels like for us, and start to get in tune with what intuition feels like in our body. And once we figure that out, we can then separate the fear and the intuition. And I would also say, is that intuition doesn't have the whole story wrapped around it. It doesn't have you shouldn't do it because you're bad, because you're wrong, because you're going to fail, because you're going to blah, 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 blah. The whole story that goes on and on and on and on. Intuition doesn't have any of that. Intuition is just that soft quietness of, maybe that's not a good idea. And it doesn't have the triggers around it. And that's a huge difference. And so oftentimes I tell my clients, when they're asking me, well, I don't know if it's fear or intuition, and they're having a whole mental stress about it, and they're like, it's fear. It's fear. Because intuition is soft, it's quiet, it's unassuming. And if we start to feel that story and the passion and the blah, we know that that's fear, because intuition doesn't act that way.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and let's face it. I mean, in the end, before we talk about taking empowered action, in the end, what everybody has to understand is their brain has been developed to keep them safe. And, while fear is a bad thing, unfortunately, biologically, your brain is meant to keep you safe, and it's trying to do what it thinks is what it thinks is right, and keeping you safe. And safety, normalcy and lack of change equals safety. It might be the wrong thing. I mean, it's the same reason why people who have eating disorders don't. How can I put this? Short version is they've done studies on this, and they even say people who you would think would want to change, like people who are depressed and people who have eating disorders and addictions. If you ask them and they answer truthfully, do they want to change? The only way they can truthfully answer that is no, even though they say yes. But when they say yes, their brain is saying, no, I really don't want to change because I'm comfortable in this situation. And it's bizarre to look at from the outside, and it's wrong in so many ways, and it's so weird, because you think, man, you're living an awful life. You should want to change, and people say, well, I do, and it's like, yeah, unfortunately, until your brain gets in tune with that and addresses the fear and realizes that the new normal is better than your current normal, then it's difficult to change. I mean, do you find, before we go into taking empowered action, when you're working with people in fears, do you find that at all, that they look at the fear and they say they want to change, but you can tell that they really don't want to get over the fear?
Yeah, well, I love fear. Oh, I love fear. When fear comes up, hallelujah, hello, fear. I love fear because it is exactly what you said. It's the brain way to stay safe. So I know when fear comes up, I'm taking big steps. Like, I'm really up leveling. So I teach my women that it's not that fear is bad. It's going to come up again and again and again. I'm sure Oprah still has fear. Tony Robbins still has fear when they're doing something new, because it's natural. There's nothing unnatural about it. Everyone has it. It's now just a matter of developing a really sexy relationship with it that doesn't allow you to give it so much power that it inhibits you from living your life. And I mean, I see that in what you just said. I feel like that's really true in domestic violence, you know, where we really stay with people because we have such an incredible way of rationalizing and of believing that it's going to go away, like in that denial phase. I don't know what the actual numbers is, but a large number of people who go through an accident where their life needs to change, or like an accident, or like they had to be hospitalized for some reason. They have a heart attack because of the way that they've been eating. They get diagnosed with diabetes and they have to remove sugar from their diet completely. These like big life-changing events, you would naturally think, oh, well, they're gonna change their life. But they don't, because they didn't change this. And if you don't change your relationship with fear, it doesn't matter what happens. It doesn't matter how many hospital visits you go. It's not going to change your life. The people that consistently really take action and change their lives are the ones that realize that the way they were operating isn't working. They need help, and they go get help, because we can't do it alone. And so for me and my women, we really look at how we can play the dance with fear. And that's where, actually, it's a perfect segue into the next step, which is, you know, once you know that that fear is there and it's going to come up, and it's going to come up even more, we need to take action anyway. We need to take action in spite of the fear. We cannot, I truly believe that if we take action based on fear, we will only perpetuate the fear. If we take action based on love, we will perpetuate the love. And we always have that option. So when fear comes up, we need to act. And we need to act in a really big way. And that makes a statement for us and for the universe that, one, we are empowered despite the fear. And two, we're not defined by our fear.
Yeah, exactly. And I love how you put it, take empowered action, not just take any action, take empowered action. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about what you mean by empowered action and taking empowered action?
Sure. It's actually funny. My coach, because of course every coach should have a coach, so my coach says take imperfect action. And I love that, because that's true, especially for, I mean, I know especially for us women, but men too, where we need to feel like it has to be perfect action in order for it to take forward. So taking that imperfect action is just a commitment to overcoming your fear. But for me, I call it taking empowered action, simply because there is a necessary beingness that's required in order for us to take action that makes a difference. And let me explain what that means. So how we are makes a big difference in our lives and in the results that we get. It is not just the doing that makes a difference in the world, but our being. And a great example of this is the Dalai Lama. You know, you just go in the room with it. He does not even have to say anything to you, and you feel a shift, because of his presence is just so powerful. He's just so in the moment, and he's just so taking away all that stuff that's really, his heart is just shining. His fullness is there. And so it doesn't matter what actions he's taking, it's going to have beautiful repercussions, because it's coming from that really beautiful place. So what matters when we take any action is that it's coming from a place of fullness, a place of wholeness, a place of beingness, more so than the doingness. So when I'm saying take empowered action, I mean make sure that before you take the action, you are looking to see the energy behind how you're doing it. If you're doing it because you need this reaction, the thing that comes from the action, right? What the result of your action. If you need it because it's going to prove to you a certain thing, you may be disappointed. And then you may never take that action again. But if you take an action because you are going to overcome your fear, and you're so excited about this, and you're so excited to really step in a place of love, and to really be in a new, like, feel the new place in your heart, then that result of your action is going to be, doesn't even matter, one, because it was the action alone that it, and two, it's going to be amazing and perfect for you because it comes from a place of love.
Yeah, that's so great. And it's so great. I couldn't have said any better myself. So instead of me babbling, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up the Experts Focus segment. This has been an incredible conversation. You want to stick around? We're going to talk a little content marketing after the break. But before we get to the break, on this piece of our show today, we talked about getting clear with what you want. We talked about addressing the fear, and we also talked about taking empowered action. And we're going to take a quick break. But before we do, we're going to do this, and there it is. So Thais has a great offer for you. There's a free audio on her website with her 5 proven principles for embodying your greatness and up-leveling your life, plus a bunch of bonus content. Her website's on the screen. It's CoachThais.com. It's on the screen. Sometimes I spell it, it's just awful. But anyway, people you can read. So head over to during the break, head over to CoachThais.com and check it out. You got to sign up to get this stuff, right, Thais? There's a sign up over there. Excellent. So just go sign up, get the free audio, 5 proven principles for embodying your greatness and up-leveling your life, plus a bunch of bonus content once again. And for those of you wondering, yes, the over-under is still at 1. It might go to 2, so we might have a push today. I'm not sure yet, but if you have no clue what I'm talking about, go watch episode 1. And during the break, like I said, head over to CoachThais.com, grab that free audio. You're going to be glad you did. And stick around. We will be right back. And we're back with segment 3 of our show today with our awesome guest, Thais Guimaraes. Thais, we've been having a great time talking about your expertise and how to totally say yes to your life. And you gave everybody a great special offer at the end of the last segment. So for those of you who are just tuning in for segment 3, you want to go back and definitely watch segment 1 and segment 2 to get to know Thais a little better and pick up her special offer. Today, here in this piece of the show, Thais, we have a little conversation about content marketing, whether it's video, whether it's blogs, whether it's audio. I always like to get a pulse on what our guests do outside of this show, because we know how great this show is. We know that, but we always love to get an expert's perspective on other content marketing and other things they're doing to get the word out, getting known and getting found, and really eliminating, cutting through all the noise that there is out in the world and getting themselves recognized as an expert. So what do you, besides doing, interviews like this, or besides doing this interview, what do you do to get the word out? What do you do from a content and content marketing perspective?
Sure. So I always tell my clients who have this question for me that if you do what you're passionate about, you're going to get really amazing results. So for me, I'm passionate on 4 different modalities in my life, and that's how I've translated into my business, which is coaching, speaking, teaching, and writing. Coaching, we talked about, and then speaking. I love being on stage, podcast interviews, but also being on stage, and I find that that's a really great modality for people who are very visual, and there's an energy that happens when you're on stage, and people are very caught up in that. So that's a really powerful way that I spread my message. And then writing, I have a blog that I absolutely love. And I love writing, and I'm actually on the process of writing my book. And one of the things that's so important for me is that you only write when you have a really powerful thing to say. It's quantity over quality, or quality over quantity. You really want to be writing from a place, like we said, empowered action, so a place from an expansive space. So when people ask how many, I say once a week, but it has to be really amazing for you, or else people are gonna feel that shit, And then my other modality, my other way of growing my business is through teaching, and I do that through YouTube videos. But I'm a yoga teacher, so I do teach yoga and workshops in person. And I've traveled across the country. I moved here from LA, and I taught workshops along the way. And I think that workshops are a really powerful way to get in front of people. And that's what really is important to me, is really being in front of people. And so that's how I spread my content marketing.
Excellent. So, so what of those 4 would you say was the biggest provides you with the most business, or the most good qualified potential clients?
I would say my workshops. Because we've already had to take an action and put a form of energy, which is the payment. So by paying and then attending, they're already invested in the message. And so at that point, it's very easy not easy, but it's streamlined to take them to the next level if their desire is there, because they are already energetically invested.
Excellent. So when you run a workshop, let's focus on that a little bit. When you run a workshop, what's the one best piece of advice you'd give for people that you've seen be successful to get good qualified people into your workshops and in front of, basically in front of you that day?
Yeah, that's a great question. So one of the things that I have been doing is really tapping into my network. So it's not just about putting Facebook ads because you don't know what you're going to get. But if you tap into your network of, for example, here in LA, I just moved, but I do have some friends here, and I asked them, do you know of anybody who may be interested in this? And of course there are, because sort of content is very powerful for people, and you don't see it all the time. So if I ask a really good friend, hey, do you have 2 to 3 women that are going to be really interested in this stuff? And they will say yes, and either you get their information or they contact it for you, depends on your comfortability level. It helps to get women into these workshops that are already speaking the language, that are already really vibing at that level. And so it's not easy. I keep saying easy. It's not easy, but it's a natural progression to take them to the next step. And the reason why it's not easy is because the part of this, and something that I didn't know as I entered my business, and I certainly know now, is that as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, a large part of what we do is sales. And a lot of people don't talk about that, do they? They talk about the coaching or the systems or all that stuff, but they don't talk about how if we are not great at selling, and by selling, I mean really being excited about what we do, so much so that we want to share that. If we're not comfortable with that, then our business is not going to be it's not going to reflect our passion.
Yeah, that's so true. And sales is always a dirty word, or at least it's gotten a bad rep. That's probably from the car salesman back in the day, which I did for a short time. I'm not too awful proud of that, but that's besides the point. No, actually, I am proud of my days in sales. But the fact of the matter is, sales, nobody gets into business to be a salesperson. But what they've got to realize, what every business owner has to realize, is regardless of what you're doing, you're selling every single minute of the day, even if you're not asking for the sale. In other words, when you create a blog article, when you create a book, when you write a book, when you do a video, when you do a podcast, you are selling. You're selling yourself. You might not be asking for a sale, but in effect, you are selling because you're going out. You're giving people examples of what you do. You're telling them stories about what you do. You're showing them how you think. And it's kind of like I said, it's a constant, it's a constant sales process even when you're not selling. I mean, do you find that in your business as well?
Oh, of course. And we sold our entire lives. I mean, we were brilliant salespeople when we were children. Daddy, I want an ice cream. No. Well, I'll do a chore. I mean, we've been brilliant at selling our ideas when we were little. And it's exactly what you said. It got to a point where we felt it was dirty. Maybe we had a bad experience with it. So it's important for us to look at our beliefs around the sales process and then look at that as a shift our mindset instead of like forcing somebody to do something they don't want to do, which is what we think sales are, right? To really seeing it as a place of sharing. I mean, if you're really suffering right now and I have something that can really support you and help you and change your life, why wouldn't I share that with you? It'd be crazy. And it's so easy for us to share books. I feel like that's a natural thing that we sell. For example, I sold Eckhart Tolle's book today by sharing it with the audience. It's very easy for us to share books because there's less of an investment in there. And the bigger the investment that the sales requires, the more nervous we get. And that's something that we got to do some work on, because if you have a desire to be of service in the world and you are not putting yourself out there, you're doing a disservice. You're doing a fucking disservice to the world, because by the very fact that you have a desire to help people means that there are people out there that are in desperate need of you, and you are not doing your service to the world by not putting it out there.
Yeah, and as long as you're coming from as long as you're coming from the right place and you have something that can help people, and that's where I always get a little when I work with people. It's I should say when I've done some free consulting and you like some initial free calls, and you realize that the person really doesn't have a gift to give to the world, but except for the fact they can sell a ketchup popsicle to a woman in a white dress and they're a really snake oil salesman, you have to gently talk them off the ledge and go, I don't want to be a part of the fact that you're going to sell people, basically a scam and a half. But if you're not, if you have something to give to people that will help them and will help the majority of people that you work with, then yeah, get out there and do it. Don't deprive the world of your gift, and don't deprive the world of the change that you can that you can help make, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Excellent. So I guess we'll keep this segment short. But from a marketing perspective, any last words of wisdom you could give to other coaches, other people who might be in a similar situation to you on what they can do to get found and cut through the noise that is out there?
Yeah, I would say stop looking at what everyone else is doing and do what you want to do. Because looking at what other people are doing is great for other people and it works for other people. Why? Because they found a way to be authentically themselves through it. After a while, of course, research is important. I'm not saying that not to do research. Of course, it's good to see what's happening out in your field, but we all know that we don't do just research. We start to obsess about what other people are doing, and we subscribe to a bazillion different newsletters, trying to like figure out just the right way to do it, and we get so many conflicting information, and then we don't know what to do, so then we feel paralyzed, so we don't put ourselves out there. All of this is a form of resistance. It's a fear coming out that's telling you that you don't know enough and you need to do more or be more or whatever. And so what's been tremendously helpful in my life and in the life of so many of my clients is to cut through all that crap. Remove that stuff. It doesn't matter what other people are doing. It matters what you are doing. So do your thing and do it from a place of authenticity that feels really aligned with you. You know, so often we say you have to have a blog. Well, I know very successful people that don't have blogs. So if blogging isn't a thing that you love to do, then don't do it. If podcast is a thing that you say, oh, it's the up-and-coming thing, I have to do a podcast, but you don't like talking to people, or you don't like being on tape, or you don't like being live, then don't do it. So you've got to figure out what feels really, really good for you. Do everything, your Facebook posts, all your marketing, from a place of, does this feel really good for me to write, or does it feel yucky? If it feels yucky, don't do it. If it feels good, send it out.
That is a great piece of advice, and this is a great way to end today's episode. So first of all, thank you very much, Thais. It was great having you on Expert Showcase today. You provided a lot of insight. If you all noticed there at the end when she started talking about fears and everything else, and you want to know more, go back and watch segments 1 and 2, because Thais will tell you how to start, getting over that. And for those of you counting us, the official over-under ended up at 1. So for those of you who bet the under on 2, you win. I don't know what you win, but you win. So that's a good thing. And before we close up today, I'd like to remind you that if you're a coach and you want to appear on an episode of Expert Showcase, you want to head to expertshowcase.com, click on the apply button, fill out your information. We'll check it out, see if you're a good fit, and we'll get back with you and see what we can do for you. And if you're a coach and would like to have someone produce your own web-based talk show like Expert Showcase, or maybe have an interview-style show like Expert Showcase, head over to VideoContent.Agency, start looking around, get in contact with us. We'll set up a call, see if we're a good fit to work together, and go from there. And until next time, make it a great day.